Novak Djokovic, forget the physical impact, mental scars will be the biggest concern for Serbs. Even the judge taking charge of yesterday's preliminary hearing for Novak Djokovic's visa appeal appeared to have some concern about the impact on the world number one's preparations for the Australian Open. I don't think it's unreasonable for the court to ask whether the particular hotel at which the applicant is staying might have available to him tennis practicing facilities, Anthony Kelly said during the Federal Circuit Court hearing. Unsurprisingly, given that Djokovic is staying at a downmarket hotel used by the Australian government to house asylum seekers, the answer was no. A request by Djokovic to move to a private rented apartment was later turned down by authorities, so the infamous Park Hotel in the Carlton suburb is where he must remain until the decisive stage of his legal battle is heard in court on Monday morning. With his mother, Dejana, revealing yesterday that her son is struggling to sleep after the furor, it could well be the most uncomfortable 96 hours of his life. Which raises the question, what sort of condition will Djokovic be in if he wins his case and is granted entry to play in the Australian Open? Often, when tennis players land in Melbourne after the long journey of up to 24 hours, practice courts will be booked for a hit only hours after stepping off the plane in an attempt to loosen the muscles. Not so for Djokovic this year, who was immediately stopped at passport control and detained in a small office overnight for more than 8 hours. Some parallels can be drawn with the 72 players who were forced to isolate in their hotels for 2 weeks last year after being deemed close contacts of COVID-19 cases on flights to Melbourne. Despite doing 5 km runs in her room, the British number 2 Heather Watson said the experience had a lasting physical effect on her. "I feel a bit drained," she said 2 months later. Djokovic will not be holed up in his room for 14 days. But it can be safely assumed that the quality of his accommodation is inferior to that of Watson and will not lend itself to jogging. It is unknown whether he even has his rackets to hit a ball against the wall after the Serbian tennis journalist Sasa Osmo reported that some of his bags had been left at the airport. The lack of warm-up matches will not bother Djokovic. He had already withdrawn from this week's ATP Cup in Sydney after it became clear last week that his medical exemption would not be approved in time. Last year he won Wimbledon without playing any matches on grass beforehand, and he is well accustomed to the conditions of the hard courts at Melbourne Park as a 9-times champion. It is the mental impact of this remarkable controversy that members of Djokovic's support team will be most concerned about. It is an unprecedented situation. If he is set free on Monday, is 7 days enough to clear his head in time for the start of an intense Grand Slam fortnight? Djokovic's ability to overcome adversity, even when it is of his own making, is one of his greatest strengths. It will, however, take something quite special to avoid any mental scarring from this dramatic episode, whether he succeeds with his appeal or not. Team Djokovic Goran Ivanišević, coach the Croatian, who famously won Wimbledon as a wild card in 2001, has worked with Djokovic for 2.5 years. He splits the coaching duties on tour with Djokovic's longtime mentor, Marian Vida. Marco Panicci, fitness trainer, a former athlete who won the Italian national long jump championship twice, has since established a career in tennis developing training programs for Svetlana Kuznetsova, Fabio Fognini, and now Djokovic for the past 4 years. Mike Krzyzewski has a verbal confrontation with Georgia Tech star Michael Devoe. Duke coach Mike Krzyzewski engaged in a verbal back-and-forth with Georgia Tech guard Michael Devoe during Tuesday's game. The incident occurred after Krzyzewski called a timeout during the second half of Duke's 69-57 win. Devoe pointed at Krzyzewski and said something. Krzyzewski then walked on the court after Devoe, stopping at half-court to speak with an official. Michael Devoe talking smack to Coach K while losing pic.twitter.com/J85S6QFGV. Crazy, TWT live January 5, 2022. No technical fouls were given out following the brief back-and-forth. There appeared to be bad blood after the game, as both teams did not participate in a handshake line. Krzyzewski reportedly spoke to Devoe and Georgia Tech coach Josh Pastner after the game. Krzyzewski did not address his back-and-forth or those conversations during his post-game press conference. Devoe explained he grew up a Duke fan, and that his emotions ran high during the game. He said he was trying to be a competitor and he made the comment to Krzyzewski. Devoe on Coach K's response, he said, "You don't know who you're talking to, but I was just trying to compete with them. That's all there was. So I guess he took it the wrong way. But me as a competitor, I want to beat Duke." Kelly Quinlan January 5, 2022. Pastner discussed the incident after the game, saying he and Devoe have the highest level of respect for Krzyzewski. Pastner said he would speak privately to Devoe and address the exchange. He also complimented Devoe's character, calling him a good kid. Coach Pastner on his lengthy exchange with Coach K after the game and the exchange between K and Michael Devoe. pic.twitter.com/RSVWPFC6HL. Carolina Blitz January 5, 2022. Pastner added he thought Devoe was in the wrong, saying, no player should ever talk to an opposing coach. Devoe is averaging 21.2 points and 5.1 rebounds in his senior season at Georgia Tech. That performance could get Devoe on NBA draft boards as the league's draft approaches. Gritty Gloucester claimed first away victory over Saracens in 13 years. This was not a great match, but it was a great victory for Gloucester. For sheer will to win, they deserved this toughest of away triumphs over Saracens. Conditions were so bad that the result may not prove much either way. Some days you just have to win, and this was one of those days. On an atrocious afternoon of pouring rain, 3 of the 4 first-half tries came from close-range lineout. The pretty stuff was saved for another day. It was Gloucester who opened the scoring with a 9th minute, third-time lucky, driving lineout in the Saracens' 22. Freddie Clark won clean ball, and with half the back line joining in, Fraser Balma rumbled over. But Gloucester conceded a string of penalties to gift Saracens their turn at the catch-and-drive. Dal Morris dummied and darted over after an initial surge. Gloucester conceded not only 7 points, Santiago Carreras and the captain, Lewis Ludlow, were sent to the sin bin. Soon after, Mark Atkinson handled an ruck and Elliot Daly screwed the ensuing penalty kick to within 7 meters of Gloucester's line. The Gallagher Premiership second-placed side remained in the 22 until the winger Rodome Segan sliced through from the next attack. Looking sharp against 15 men, he was unstoppable against 13. But Carreras returned from his yellow card and hassled Mauro Itoje from the restart, as the former Saracen Jack Singleton crossed with the weather worsening. By the time Adam Hastings converted expertly from touch, Ludlow was back on the field, and somehow Gloucester were only behind by 2 points. Another relentless line-out drive, as the momentum and penalties swung the visiting side's way, led to a yellow card for Mako Vunipola, but Gloucester were unable to take advantage with Jamie George kicking Saracens clear. Back came Gloucester, but again their lineout was repelled. They were only 14-12 behind at halftime, but had come away with only 1 try from 5 attempted lineout drives. These are not usually the sort of statistics required to win in North London, for all the narrowness of the scoreline and a one-man advantage to start the second half. When Gloucester were awarded a penalty in front of the posts in the 52nd minute, Hastings kicked for points rather than position, and Gloucester were in front for less than a minute. Immense pressure from the restart led to Charlie Chapman being charged down by Theo McFarland, the replacement, scoring within a minute of taking the field. Now 4 points behind instead, Gloucester's next penalty went to the corner. Another penalty. Another lineout followed immediately. Saracens made a mess of the set piece and turned over the Gloucester attack as the rain made running rugby a slippery proposition. The TMO, Claire Hodnett, however, saw a high tackle that the referee missed, and this time Gloucester made no mistake with their driving lineout, the replacement Jack Clement burrowing over. Hastings converted and back came Gloucester, who won an immediate penalty. Hastings kicked them into a 6-point lead. Alex Lewington, another replacement, scored in the corner, but Alex Lazowski could not better the conditions from the touchline, and Gloucester were able to hold out for an outstanding afternoon's work, 13 years since their previous away win away to Saracens. After losing to Harlequins at home, Gloucester have reignited their ambitions to make the top 4. Their forte, the set-piece lineout, was not at its best against the organization of their opposition and the awful nature of the elements, but in the end it was just about good enough to send them back to Gloucester with a famous victory. Chris Paul defends 10-day player Emmanuel Terry in front of Boston questioners. Phoenix Suns point guard Chris Paul didn't let hecklers in Boston harass one of the team's 10-day signees last week in a story told by Yahoo Sports NBA insider Chris Haynes on Thursday's NBA on TNT broadcast. While dealing with multiple players in health and safety protocols last week, the Suns signed power forward Emmanuel Terry to a 10-day contract. The hardship signings have been constant over the past month as teams deal with the protocols amid the Omicron variant of COVID-19 sweeping through the nation. Terry did not play on December 27th, the day he signed, and was in for only 1/22 of game time 2 days later. But on New Year's Eve, he saw more action while on the road against the Boston Celtics. And while he was on the bench during the game, he faced heckling by fans in the Boston crowd, Haynes reported. They reportedly called him a one-day guy, as well as other insults. It was Paul who stepped in and addressed fans. Per Haynes, he told them to respect this player who is helping to keep our season alive. Paul also gave a message for Haynes to give during the Suns' win against the Los Angeles Clippers. "I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to all the players with 10-day contracts who stayed ready," Paul said. "You're the reason we're making it through this season, and we couldn't do it without you." Terry told Haynes that hecklers sent him a DM apologizing after the game. Players signing 10-day hardship contracts are keeping themselves in shape and game ready for if they get a call or chance with a team. There have been big names who know the NBA lifestyle, such as Joe Johnson returning to TD Garden in Boston 20 years after playing with the franchise. And then players such as the 25-year-old Terry, who prior to the signing had only played 3 NBA games back in 2018-19. Without players like that, teams would be forced to forfeit games since they couldn't meet the required minimum roster numbers, or the games would be cancelled, pulling contests off of TV and leaving fans without games to watch. The hardship signings have varied impact on the court, but Paul is right. Without them, the NBA might not make it through the season.